Here at the Senior Bowl, Mobile, Alabama, with Albert Breer, senior NFL reporter. And the big news, obviously, in the offseason is the hiring of head coach Urban Meyer. You seem to definitely covered that in depth. So what do you think of the hire?
I think it's really interesting. I think more than anything else, he has what I think most often is overlooked in these hires. Everybody's always, can he develop a quarterback? Can he call an offense? I think what Urban brings in spades above anything else is an ability to lead a program and to build a program. And he showed that at Bowling Green, at Utah, at Florida, and Ohio State. And so I think as much as anything else, I think you see an organization that probably needed to be torn down a little bit because there had been sort of different iterations of the same thing coming through. And this is really what that is. And I think what Urban's going to bring is something that's very holistic. And you're going to see over the next few months, I think you're going to see the importance of nutrition and strength and player development. And all of these things, I think, are part of the deal that you get when you bring in an Urban Meyer. So that's what's so interesting about it to me, is that it's sort of like this holistic approach and an emphasis on program building. And so, I think, of course, you have that, and now the staff hires become very important, too, because of it.
Definitely. What do you think of those staff hires? There's a lot of reports right now, nothing finalized, but it seems like he's building a pretty good mix of college experience and NFL experience.
Sure, and I think one of the things that's interesting, too, is he has guys who have been program leaders who are part of building his program in different places. Chris Ash at Ohio State, Charlie Strong at Florida. I know that they talked at one point to Steve Adazio, who was obviously also with him at Florida. And so it's guys who've seen the program built and that can be his messengers in the building. So I think that was clearly the first emphasis for him, was bringing in guys who can clearly carry out what he wants to build. And then I think there's, the guys that they're bringing in that are going to bridge the gap, college to the NFL. And that's your Joe Cullen and your Darrell Bevel. And I think a couple more guys are going to come down the pike soon that are going to kind of reflect that he acknowledges that there is some things that he's going to have to change to fit to the NFL game.
Yes, he seems like he is going to have a huge coaching staff. And the thing that struck out to us is we don't know him that well, obviously. In his introductory press conference, he was so prepared. Came in everything laid out, but for someone like you, that seems to be his MO. That's what he's known for.
There's no question. And, I can, recall a couple conversations I've had with him over the course of the last couple of years where he talked about researching the NFL and all the stuff that he did to try to learn the things that it would take to be an NFL head coach in case an opportunity like this came along. It was obviously out there that the tires had been kicked on the Cowboys' job in 2020. And so I think this is something he's ultimately very, very prepared for, and he's got so much alumni across the NFL that really allowed him to kind of look at it and see what works and what doesn't. And I think what was so interesting in talking to him about it was, he really believes that every team's got good players. And, we all talk about these sorts of things, and for him, I think it's a belief that an NFL player inherently is a good player. And so it's what you do with that player that really counts. And I think that part of it is so interesting because it's going to be a focus on player development. It's going to be a focus on what the coaches can do. And I think, one thing you're going to see ultimately, and I certainly noticed this at Ohio State, that coaching staff's going to take accountability for it. And they're not going to be pointing the fingers at players. And it's going to be, if you can't develop them, then we're going to find somebody else who can do it. So I think that is what's really interesting about a lot of the research that he did, is that there's going to be a focus not only on drafting the right guys, because the Jags obviously have a lot of draft capital, not just signing the right guys because they have a lot of cap space. It's also going to be turning the players who are in their building already into Urban's type of guys.
You mentioned that draft capital, and obviously the Jaguars' #1 overall pick, and there's some rumors, I don't even know if I want to call them rumors, that it might not be Trevor Lawrence, but if it is, how quick can this turn around?
I can probably put those rumors to bed. I don't think there's any way it's anybody but Trevor Lawrence. And look, I think they're going to go through the process and kick the tires and all these guys. Obviously, he's got background in Justin Fields. He didn't coach him at Ohio State, but he knows a lot of people that did. So he's going to have background in Justin Fields. Zach Wilson's a really interesting prospect. But in the end, and look, this isn't just, me doing research over the last 2 weeks. This is me doing research over the last 2 years. Scouts and coaches who've looked at him on tape, and the NFL coaches and scouts that have looked at him on tape, they all say the same thing, which is this is a generational type of quarterback prospect, and this is the type of prospect that does not come along very often. So what are we talking about? We're talking about John Elway in '83. We're talking about Peyton Manning in '98. And we're talking about Andrew Luck in 2012. And if you want to know the difference, look who the second quarterbacks in those drafts were. John Elway in 83, it was Todd Blackledge. Peyton Manning in 98, it was Ryan Leaf. Andrew Luck in 2012, it was Robert Griffin. And so I just think like the chance to get a sure thing, like have that sort of building block, it's a huge reason why I think Urban decided to go to Jacksonville in the first place. And ultimately, I think it's why most people across the league saw that as the most attractive job opening on the market.